You ever wake up and realize your life just changed in the most absurd way? One morning, my family couldn't park in our own driveway. Not because of construction, not because of an emergency, but because the HOA literally banned us from using it. Yes, banned. Imagine the driveway where my dad taught me to ride my bike, where our family car waited patiently every day, suddenly off limits. The very place that felt like home was suddenly declared off limits by a group of people we barely knew. The HOA had decided that, for some inexplicable reason, we weren't allowed to park there anymore. No warning, no discussion. Just a cold, official letter slapped on our front door like a verdict. I remember reading it over and over thinking, is this some kind of mistake? A prank? But no, it was real. Their twisted new rule, enforced by a woman with more power than common sense. Let's call her Karen. Karen was the kind of person who thrived on control. She wasn't just an HOA president, she was the HOA president, a self-appointed ruler with a clipboard and a vendetta. I had met her a few times before, smiling tight-lipped while she lectured us about lawn gnomes and mailbox heights. But this was next level. You might think that's where the story ends, right? That we'd pack up and move on. You'd be wrong. Because here's the kicker. My dad isn't just anyone. He's a banker. A calm, calculating man who doesn't lose his temper easily. And when push came to shove, he didn't just accept this nonsense. No, he had a plan. A plan that would turn the tables on the HOA in a way they never saw coming. Stick around, I promise. This story is about to get wild. Our neighborhood was your classic suburban dream. White picket fences, manicured lawns, and that ever-looming HOA watching from the shadows. It had been our home for over 10 years. Aside from the usual small disagreements, like whose holiday decorations were too flashy, things ran pretty smoothly. Enter Mrs. Henderson, better known as Karen, the HOA president. She was obsessed with community standards, which really meant enforcing petty rules with an iron fist. The day we received the letter banning parking in our own driveway, I thought it was some kind of clerical error. No more parking your cars in your driveway, it said. The HOA had declared that driveways were shared community spaces, as if the driveway I paid for, maintained, and parked in every day suddenly belonged to everyone but me. The next morning, Karen showed up at our doorstep, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp as a hawk. Rules are rules, she said with that smug, practiced smile. You'll have to find another place to park, I asked. Why? We've always parked here, she just shrugged. It's the new policy. You can appeal, but I wouldn't hold my breath. We tried talking it out, but Karen was stone cold. Our neighbors started whispering behind our backs, some clearly siding with her just to avoid her wrath. Then came the warnings, the threats of fines. $50 here, $100 there. Our mailbox transformed into a graveyard of HOA letters. One evening, I caught Karen watching us from across the street, binoculars in hand. It felt less like community care and more like a surveillance operation. That was just the beginning, I told myself, realizing this wasn't about parking anymore. It was about power, and we were pawns in her game. Things escalated quickly. One morning, my dad's car was keyed, a deep, jagged scratch running along the driver's side. No proof, but it was clear who had enemies with motives. Then, almost nightly, our garbage cans were mysteriously tipped over right after we'd put them out. At HOA meetings, Karen became more aggressive, cutting us off mid-sentence, dismissing our concerns with a flick of her hand. Fines piled up. New violations appeared like magic. Too tall grass, unauthorized plants, even excessive noise at hours when nothing happened. One afternoon, we found a sign planted by our driveway that read, "No parking. Violation subject to fine." Like a punch in the gut. We weren't just fighting rules anymore. It felt like harassment, targeted and personal. The tension was suffocating. My mom did her best to stay calm, but you could see the frustration in her eyes. I'll never forget my little sister asking why we couldn't park in our own driveway anymore, her innocent confusion cutting through all the noise. Despite the chaos, we found small pockets of support. Some neighbors, quietly fed up with Karen's reign, offered sympathy and even challenged the HOA's decisions behind closed doors. But with every little win came a new obstacle. A fine doubled, a threat escalated. One night, my dad sat me down. His face was serious, but his eyes carried that familiar calm. "This isn't just about a driveway," he said quietly. "It's about standing up for what's right, and I have a plan." Curious, I leaned in. "This fight is about to get personal," he added with a faint smile. Dad's plan wasn't about shouting louder or stooping to their level. No screaming matches or dirty tricks. He leveraged what he knew best: banking, numbers, and leverage. Quietly, he started digging into the HOA board members' financial ties: loans, mortgages, accounts. Turns out, several were clients of his bank. Step 1. Confidentially alert his bank's compliance team about the HOA's questionable behavior and the potential risks tied to continuing their loans. Step 2. Gather evidence: letters, photos, fines, and prepare a case demonstrating the HOA's harassment. Meanwhile, we kept parking discreetly, careful not to give Karen any ammunition. Dad even designed a simple, dignified sign for our driveway: private property, no unauthorized parking. Subtle, but with meaning. As the bank began reviewing the HOA's financial standing, cracks started to show. Board members grew anxious. Rumors spread about possible loan reviews and financial fallout. We watched in calm confidence, knowing the tide was turning. Then came the day the HOA president got the call. The bank was reviewing their loans. Suddenly, the HOA's iron grip felt less ironclad. The final HOA meeting was electric. Karen tried to maintain her usual smug smirk, but you could see doubt flickering in her eyes. Dad spoke calmly but firmly, laying out the evidence of harassment and the looming financial consequences if the HOA didn't change its course. Neighbors who had been silent before now voiced their support openly. The board was forced to back down, parking bans lifted, fines revoked. Karen's power shattered. The neighborhood exhaled a collective sigh of relief. As Dad closed the meeting, he locked eyes with Karen and said, "Sometimes, the best way to enforce rules is to follow the rules yourself. And sometimes, the best enforcement is knowing when to back off." Justice wasn't loud. It was smart, calculated, and inevitable. Looking back, it's easy to laugh at how parking in a driveway spiraled into a full-blown saga. But beneath the humor lies a serious truth. Standing up for what's right often means thinking beyond the obvious, staying calm, and using your strengths wisely. My dad didn't fight fire with fire. He fought with strategy. And sometimes, that's the most powerful weapon you have. So here's my takeaway. When life slams a no parking sign in your face, don't just honk and drive off. Think, plan, act. And remember, the pen and the bank can be mightier than the HOA. What would you have done in our shoes? Comment "Justice served" if you stuck around for the whole story. Or share your own HOA horror tales. I'm all ears. And hey, if you ever feel powerless, remember this: sometimes the quietest moves make the biggest impact. Thanks for watching. Now, who's parking on whose driveway in your neighborhood?
Thanks for watching.